So ultimately, it should be a seamless transition. You should be able to see that continuity and progression, but essentially it doesn't exist. So that's what it looks like. You'll have primary PE curriculum sits one end, you'll have secondary PE curriculum sits the other, and there's no joined up approach. It's a very disconnected, a very disjointed partnership. What should it look like? Well, there should be what we call some type of transition bridge. And what I mean by transition bridge, it's that there's these transition modules to support the primary school kids moving to secondary school. And it shouldn't just take place at one instance. It should be a continual program across, if not year 6, if not year 5 and year 6, at least year 6, so final year of primary school. So what does it look like overall? Well, PE becomes what we call a stop-start curriculum. So primary school kids get to the end of primary school, the curriculum stops, it'll start afresh in secondary school. And the secondary school teachers will neglect and forget everything that the primary school kids have been taught, because there's no trust, there's no professionalism between the two. Yeah, you can see that there's very, very little support for primary school PE teachers. We need to develop these stronger links. We need to have that better understanding of what goes on. And until we do that, we're always going to have these issues with transition. So just some evidence there. Again, this is the type of evidence that you can bring in to support what you write about, what you talk about. These are some of the theories that I've just brought in from a couple of research papers, and again, you can bring these in to support what you write about. Secondary school teachers tend to think that PE in a primary school is nothing more than playing games. So there's no emphasis on movement skills, there's no emphasis on PE curriculum. It's just give kids a ball and say, right, off you go and play. Pay attention to the way that some of these references are written, the language that is used, how they're referenced. If we use point 2 there, it says, critically, this has resulted in a fragmented curriculum taught in discrete blocks, often presented as disconnected and differentiated experience. So yeah, PE becomes very watered down. It just becomes a number of discrete experiences where kids play games. We also talk about the Ostrich syndrome. So this is something that I termed from a piece of research that I did. You get primary school teachers and secondary school teachers, they'd rather just stick their head in the sand, really. That secondary school teachers don't want to know what primary school teachers are doing, and vice versa, because they distrust each other, they've got no respect for each other. Whereas both of their jobs would be made better and young children's experiences would be better if they were showing some respect and talking to one another. So yeah, primary PE teachers are there to develop the foundations of movement, and the secondary PE teachers should be there to scaffold, make sure, right, how do I move this child on? How do I support them? But there's no support there. There's none of that respect. So this goes on. I talked about stop-start curriculum. And again, these are the terms, this is a terminology that you can bring in as evidence to underpin what you need to write for this part of the assessment. And I think in terms of the significance of fundamental movement skills in the transition process, the quote here from Griggs in 2007 is spot on. It's primary physical education should be of primary importance. Because if you don't get the bit right at the start with the 5 to 12-year-olds, by the time they get to secondary, is it too late? Is our job as secondary school PE teachers far more challenging? Have we got the time, the effort, the commitment to spend all that time with young children focusing on fundamental movement skills? Have secondary school PE teachers got the knowledge to do it? No, I don't think they have. And that's what we're assuming here, that secondary school teachers do recognise that kids have got no movement competence when they come to them, and that they're prepared to spend the time and they've got the knowledge to do something about it. Whereas probably most of them have got very little understanding of fundamental movement skill, which is, again, is quite alarming. So we know the potential, but what tends to happen is that primary school PE gets overlooked, and as a consequence it just becomes playing games or playing sport because of all the issues we've already talked about with primary PE. Again, there's some really good evidence out there. Again, make sure when you look at this section for the assessment, I think it's only worth 15 marks, but 15 marks is a significant chunk of your final overall mark. Just make sure you understand the question and you bring in the key evidence to support and underpin what you write.